Your source for your favorite gospel music. It's all right here on The Uplift.
Good Saturday morning, right here in Dallas, Texas. And once again, we want to welcome you to www.theupliftlive.com. And once again, it's a great Saturday morning. I'm Reverend Ashley, and we thank you so very much for being with us for another edition of The Review. Each and every Saturday morning, right here on this great gospel radio station, www.theupliftlive.com. Every Saturday morning, we're here from 10 till about 11:30, just reviewing some of the top news stories of the week, essential to the African-American community. But of course, we support and we work with all communities here at www.theupliftlive.com. And once again, I'm Reverend Ashley. I continue to thank God for giving me a 30-year tenure of serving and being a journalist right here in our Dallas-Fort Worth area. And as I look back in my career and many other careers over the years, it's rare that you get a chance to be in one market for 30 years. The late Brother Joe Bagby, who was my colleague at Heaven 97. Brother Joe had been on the radio for 50 years here in Dallas, Texas. And when you think about people like Tom Joyner, Ricky Smiley, people like that, longevity. Some of you may remember the late Ron Chapman, who was over at some of the radio stations right here in Dallas, Texas. It's kind of an honor. So once again, we are glad to be with you this morning right here at www.theupliftlive.com. Also, we encourage you to go to the Google Play or go to the App Store and download the app for this radio station. It's called Uplift It Now. The times that we're living in, you're going to need the spirit that resides in gospel music. Now, the spirit that resides in gospel music is the spirit of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And when you think about the freedoms that we have here in the United States of America, this country was founded as a Christian country. The first book in the public school system in America was the Bible, and that was at Harvard University. Did you know that? Harvard University, one of the first universities, if not the first university in the United States of America. And the Bible was a textbook. And now we've made such a change in our society, you can't even pray in school. Where for those of you who have any common sense, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And for you, if you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic, you don't quite believe, so we understand that, but we love you anyway. And that's what the world needs, more love and just more companionship in light of all the things that we're dealing with. Well, this morning, we're hoping to have some guests with us here at www.theupliftlive.com. And of course, we do have our phone lines that are open at 214-239-2898. That's 214-239-2898. That's our number to call. And it seems like we're being joined here by the Dean of Journalism, the one and only Cheryl Smith, the publisher of a plethora of Black weekly newspapers here. And she's even served on the national level for the National Association of Black Journalists. And I do believe that she's a professor right now. I remember one time when she was a professor over there at Paul Quinn College. And they tell me now that she did such a bang-up job at Paul Quinn College that the white folks in Dallas now say, come on over here and educate us at these schools and colleges here, because we don't want Black folks getting all that divine knowledge. But good morning to you, Cheryl. How are you this Saturday morning?
Good morning. I'm doing great. And good morning to your audience.
All right. Now, where are you this morning? Are you in Dallas this morning?
I am in Dallas. Things are getting ready to start picking up again. So I will be on the road quite a bit in the future.
Yes, indeed. Well, once again, Cheryl, just invite everybody to how we can read your newspapers and plug into all that you're doing.
Well, I have Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, and iMessenger. And you can, all of them have websites, have social media pages. But what you really want to get is our newsletter that comes out every morning without fail. And it's called Metro News, and it brings you Metro News from around the world. So you may be reading about Haiti one day, you may be reading about Memphis the next, and you may be reading about Flint, Michigan, or right in your own backyard what's happening. So you can check us out. Go to www.texasmetronews.com. and you can find out about all of us, all of the platforms, and then you can see me here.
Yes. Now, also, you've been working closely with the Dallas Morning News. You have been working with the major news media establishments. It seems like you're trying to help them integrate and become more sensitive. Because at one time when we looked at newsrooms around the country, there may have been one or two African Americans, and we would never even be considered as news directors or anything like that for a station like Channel 8. But I understand we've had African Americans working a lot of these strategic positions, thanks to the push from the National Association of Black Journalists.
Well, the thing about it, that interestingly, the so-called mainstream media is realizing something that a lot of Black folk don't realize: the importance of the Black press. And pre-COVID, I was contacted by the Dallas Morning News editor at the time, Mike Wilson, and we had discussions about us doing a collaboration. I can tell you 20 years ago, it would have never happened. I don't think
Yes.
we had the leadership that would have liked it. Some of the Black people there definitely wouldn't have liked it because they had on that plantation, they had a culture of wanting to be the only Black people that the white people at the morning news knew.
Mm.
And so we talked about it, and I gave it a lot of thought. I talked to folks about it because I didn't need the Dallas Morning News to reach my people, even though there are our people who feel like I'm better because of the relationship with the Dallas Morning News. Because anytime white folks accept us, then we feel it's okay to accept us. But it's a mutually beneficial relationship because it's not just about news coverage, it's about across the spectrum. I've been talking to them as late as last night about printing. There are billboards around the city with talking about We Know News, and it has, Texas Metro News right up there with Dallas Morning News and Aldea. And even still going even further, if you picked up last week's the 27th of February, on the front page was a story that I co-wrote on the 50 years of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Oh,
was in USA Today, and they have their special edition. And it's I got comments from people because it was for that audience. Now Texas Metro News, we're doing a special edition for Black Music Month on the 50 years of hip hop, and I tell you, it'll have a different flavor because it's a different audience. But also, one thing that the editors at USA Today got to hear as they sat in on some of the interviews because they set them up. But the one with Chuck D, a Public Enemy, I set up. And so I sent it to them to transcribe for me because I told them I was really busy and I didn't have time to do that. Well, anyway, at the beginning of the tape, Chuck says, Cheryl, I wouldn't do this for anybody but you. And that told them something. They did not have the access to people that I did. And he's like the lead of the story. And so, and he's going to play an important role in my story, of course, because he's a longtime friend and he's more than just a rapper. But I am going to focus on women. But that's just an example of how they need us. And there will be people who will comment about that. But I still have the issue with Black people loving and not loving the Black press. I can't understand it at all.
Well, the Black press has been around for a long time, and people tend to take you for granted after you've been around for a long time, and then when you're gone, that's when people have a tendency to indeed realize that you're gone. I think we're being joined by another guest here. Let's see. Now we've invited, of course, we have a Dr. Norman Clements, a couple of doctors going to be joining us this morning, and also Dr. Dralvis Edwards, one of our own local doctors. There's a possibility that Reggie Ruffin of the Just Cause Coalition may be checking in there as well. And also, I want to give a hallelujah shout out to City Councilwoman Carol King Arnold in District 4. We saw a big story there with her yesterday, but they're building houses in District 4, and it seems like a lot of the neighborhoods are beginning to come back. The city of Dallas is also seemingly working along with Mr. Al Heron of Century 21 Galloway Heron in terms of building homes and bringing more homes online. And let's see who this very distinguished gentleman is that we have with us at this time. Is this Dr. Clemens or Dr. Clemens? Is that you, Dr. Clemens?
That's me right here. I think I've joined you here. I've just been playing with the background here.
All right. Well, it's Dr. Neil Clemens.
Hold on. In fact, I got a guy here but let me put me on mute. Let me get this guy. He wants to come on your show, okay? If you can put me on hold a minute.
Well, once again, we got a group of Black doctors, Cheryl. You know, Dr. Dralvis Edwards. You know, you have this movement going on right now. I think it's Black men in white coats. If you recall, trying to encourage more young Black men to become doctors. And Dr. Dralvis Edwards just this past week was acknowledged as one of the great doctors. I think he was the featured speaker to a lot of our young African-American doctors and a lot of young boys who want to become doctors. But a lot of these doctors have been having all kinds of problems in terms of a two-tiered medical system, as if they're treated one way as Black doctors, but white doctors are treated another way, and that impacts the health of Black people. Now, we've always known, and you know, you followed the story with Dr. Dralvis Edwards for years, Commissioner Price, and everybody who's told us about the two-tiered medical system that we have in this country. So they're going to be joining us this morning to maybe talk about some of those particular disparities there. And once again, Dr. Norman Clemens, we kind of welcome you back. Let me introduce you to Cheryl Smith.
How you doing, Smith? How you doing, Doc?
Great. Nice.
Cheryl is considered to be the dean of journalism here in our Dallas-Fort Worth community, has a plethora of Black newspapers, educating a lot of our young people and working with the so-called mainstream media there, if you will. But once again, Dr. Clemens, we thank you for chiming in and being with us this morning. Once again, we're here in Dallas, Texas, gospel radio station, www.theupliftlive.com. My name is Robert Ashley. I've served as a journalist here in Dallas well over 30 years because we've been working with Dr. Edwards as he has written his books. And I remember when he got to I think it was the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, trying to make a case that he had been in court with for over 20, 25 years. And then all of a sudden they canceled the hearing. He never got his day in court. And of course, a lot of doctors have suffered as a result of that and what we've gone through in terms of COVID-19 and that whole nine there. But Dr. Clemens, won't you come on into the conversation and tell us some of your concerns this morning about healthcare in America?
It's very interesting. It was very interesting that you talked about media and holding Black media. We have to hold, in this case, Black media and particularly just media accountable, because this is a very serious issue. It's not only about the thousands of people have died as a result of this targeting of Black doctors around the country, and thousands of patients have been by being denied health care. And our healthcare, we've had Black folk represent almost 4.6% of the physician population. And you add pharmacists and dentists and that, it may come up to about 5% and yet we're almost 40% of those being indicted by the federal government, targeted, and so. And then when you add Indian doctors in there, these are doctors of color. We're looking at they represent like 8% of the population and 60% of indictments. So you see what we have here is targeting of people of color. And the government is going after those who have the ability. You see like a Dr. Edwards, those who have ambition, those who refuse to be subjugated, and those who have the knowledge of and wisdom. Are most are people who are the structure of our community have been targeted, and it's been done quietly and silently. So we developed a blog called YouAreWithinTheNorms.com. You can pull this up, YouAreWithinTheNorms.com. And we talked about, it's almost 200 articles, and I think Dr. Wren is going to be chime in, but to put it short, we bring class, and we're all, despite all the education that we've had, we're now being targeted for being drug dealers and for prescribing medications that are FDA approved and legally prescribed to our patients. And we're also being, along the words, being put out of our offices for healthcare fraud, which is a deception. And that the opioid crisis, that this war on drugs has become a war that has come to black. It's a war. Actually, the war on black people is the war on drugs. And this war on drugs is being used against our best and our brightest. And now we have almost 2,000, 2,500 doctors, period, in prison, and of which about 800 doctors are black doctors, are African Americans, and that does not include the African doctors and that have been targeted here. So if you go to our blog, youarewithinthenorms.com, you see what's really going on here, and we have documented each of these cases, as many cases as we can, and we've exposed them, and they have come after us. I'm a pharmacist and a dentist.
Yes.
My pharmacy was raided, and our property was taken, and they said we were overprescribing. Now, pharmacies don't prescribe anything, but we were overprescribing and overutilization in these so-called criminal acts they claim we did. And yet I was never charged with anything. My pharmacy was never charged with anything. I've never to this day been arrested or anything like that. And the reason was because one, we created this blog, youarewithinthenorms.com. And also my brother was a Detroit police investigator, and he had retired, and he began to show that these warrants that they were issuing lacked probable cause, and that these doctors were being targeted because of our assets. If all they have to do is walk in and say, Dr. Edwards, you are a drug dealer. Dr. Ashley, you are a drug dealer. That's all they have to do. And the next thing you know, all your assets, your wife's assets, your husband's assets, your children's assets are taken. Civil forfeiture and sort of thing. And this happens with white doctors and Indian doctors and Asian doctors. What they didn't count on in this case was that all of us doctors, all these people, all these various races would get together, all these political beliefs that we would all get together, these poor white boys and poor black boys and poor Asian boys, get together and figure their game out and expose it.
Yes.
And that's what's a big threat. That has really got to move on. So yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right, but once again, if you're just now joining us, you're listening and watching the review right here at www.theupliftlive.com, brand new 24-hour gospel online radio station right here in Dallas, Texas. I'm Reverend Ashley. Along with us this morning, Dr. Norman Clements, talking about the plight of some doctors of color and what we've come to find. It seemed like the federal government, our intelligence agencies, the FBI, and all these DEA and Drug Enforcement Administration officials are running an alleged game against black doctors or doctors of color, tying them up in court for years, saying that they are dispensing more drugs than they are allowed to dispense. And then I think that was a case involving I think his name was Dr. Huran. And eventually, after 15 years of litigation, they come to find out they had to wind up dropping the charges, but they tied him up for 15 years in his practice, squandered all of his assets. And I know that Dr. Edwards has been fighting for at least 20 years in court. And Cheryl, when we think about what these doctors are going through, if they're being harassed by the federal government, I don't know if the Congressional Black Caucus or anybody have said anything about it. This is definitely going to have an impact as it trickles down on the community.
Well, it's not trickled down. It has rained down. It is a hurricane.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I didn't mean to butt in, Miss Cheryl.
No.
It has been a hurricane on the community because thousands, we're being systematically eliminated. So in other words, despite all that fancy education that we've got, that they tell us, you've got to go to school and get an education and those sort of things. we've done that. You know, we're the guys who were the smartest in the class and stuff, and did what we were supposed to do. And we find out that once you get to that level of competency where you become a pharmacist, in my case, a dentist, in my case, doesn't matter. You know, we become targeted, and now I'm a drug dealer, and doing everything by the book. And the interesting thing was when we started publishing this blog, all the people started coming out. Dr. Imran, a psychiatrist, all of a sudden, all his training and research, he's a drug dealer. And the fact that and then the other thing is that media, particularly Black media, seemed to have a contempt for education. And they talk about, you know, oh, we've got to do this now. When you bring this to them, you know, I went to one media guy. He's a famous guy, guy on XM radio. When we go, and some people don't hear my voice who don't recognize my voice, go to him and we said, hey, this is what's going on. This is Doc, this is what we're doing about it. And he says, oh, Norm, all you're trying to do is be a celebrity. You know,
my God.
I mean, and Drow was here, you know, my granddaughter here.
Well, he must haven't read any of the cases or anything.
He did. It is just like this contempt. And my granddaughter says, why does he do that to you, granddad? You're not trying to be a celebrity. He says, you know, you're just trying to tell the truth. You know, why is he so rude to people? And I mean, people see this and stuff. Yes. And so we've had people like Dr. Wilmer Leland, yourself on, Dr. Mr. Amika Kushu, and those sort of things, who have taken this subject matter up and have run with it and said that we are in very serious trouble, that we are being targeted. It's just targeted. And you are within the norms.com. I mean, there's still a lot of articles in here. You'll see.
Right, let me interrupt you real quick, Doc, because I want to get Cheryl into the conversation. Yeah. And you know, and it seems like as long as this has been going on, Dr. Clemens, this is happening under Democrats and Republicans. But Cheryl, have you heard anything about these Black doctors being harassed in a two-tiered medical system and how it's impacting the health of Black America?
I didn't have to hear about it to know what was going on, and that is one of these at the center of the problems with, if we just say Black America, because we don't internalize other folks in our community's struggle. We're only concerned about ours. I don't know who the person is on XM, but what I will say is that they probably were not a journalist. And that's the difference. Sometimes you don't know who you're going to just because they are a Black person there. Yes. You know, some of them are just entertainers themselves. And they don't. And then too, sad to say, there are a lot of people who just want to be celebrities. You know, I tell them I don't want to be a celebrity. And I have people who come to me, and yes, I've taught at Paul Quinn, and I think I didn't teach at North Texas and Texas Women's before, but after. But I tell my students to say they want to be radio personalities. But first, I used to insult them and say, well, first you got to have a personality. But then also I would tell them I don't make celebrities. What I do is I guide you so you can do work that is celebrated. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in this instance, you know, with the doc, I know it's something I'm very interested in. And I just, you know, for me, the best example I could give you is that there were some robberies in the Korean community in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I went to the town hall meeting that the Korean business community had, and I could have closed my eyes and they could have been talking about what was going on in the Black community and how they felt disenfranchised. And as I told one of my Korean brothers, you know what? Just like you're out here for y'all need to come out and be there for someone else. So when it does hit you, you have backup also, but that's not what's happening. We only jump on issues when it affects affects us and infects our community. I heard, Doc, you said that, why I'm trying to get the colored element, if you will, because you said that whites, Asians, and blacks came together. Doctors came together, right?
Yes, ma'am. What we did was, yes, we did.
Well, so that means you're not saying they're targeting black doctors.
Oh, they are targeting us.
Well, okay, and
We're
see,
the
and that's what I believe to be the case.
we are the easiest enforcement targets. White doctors are targeted based upon assets. Okay, they can go after them based upon assets and stuff. But we are targeted, and they're also targeted if they see a large population. All of a sudden, boom. So this is a systematic plan by the Department of Justice, DEA, which is a rogue organization, and they're the ones who are facilitating these these opioids, these illicit drugs that are coming into our community. And this goes back to the Nixon's war on drugs. This stuff is being brought in here. The DEA and the DOJ are facilitating it. One only need to read the SIGAR's report. I want people to pull it. It's SIGGAR, the Special Inspector General on Afghan Reconstruction, John Shapko. When the United States entered into Afghanistan, where these poppies are grown, the Taliban had reduced poppy growth to like 7.7 thousand acres. When the United States left Afghanistan in 20 years later, the growth had gone to 328,000 hectares of poppy growth, of which 97% was converted into heroin. And we paid off these guys. This is the United States government, though. It's not something.
Well, see, and that's why it's hard, Doctor, for me to wrap my head around that they are equitably going after blacks, Asians, Latino, and whites. That just doesn't fit in the government's DNA to go after all of us equitably, because there is a war on Black America. And I assure you, and like I'm just thinking, you're a dentist, and when we look at the Black people in America, more of us will go to a non-Black doctor than white America will go to a Black doctor. Will you give me that?
Not necessarily. I think that more of us end up going to a white doctor because our Black doctors have been totally eliminated from programs. We're paid differently. We are, and there's truth. I mean, we are paid differently with things about redlining, for example. We call redlining. A Black doctor in a Black neighborhood is paid for the same procedure 40% less. If a Black woman works as a physician in a neighborhood, they are audited far more than any white provider.
Well, I'm talking about the psyche.
So we, in terms of targeting, we run into a system which we identified as regulatory racism. And regulatory racism works uniquely because these are guys they act as police, but they do not carry guns. They do not carry weapons. What they do is they misinterpret the laws and procedures so that they work against us. And we write about this in You're Within the Norms in our article, how regulatory racism affects Black healthcare providers in terms of payment, in terms of those who get investigated, in terms of how we open up businesses, and the fines that we're oftentimes subjected to, and the unfairness within the insurance reimbursement program. It's multidimensional, and it's all within. And we discuss this in various articles. In fact, Dr. Wren and Dr. Edwards and other counterparts have written about this in these articles. Yes, ma'am.
I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get ready to pause one of those quick breaks. And once again, you're listening to The Review right here at www.theupliftlive.com. I'm Reverend Ashley. And of course, you can tell a friend about this radio station, www.theupliftlive.com. And be sure now to check out some of the programming, because coming up on Monday, we've got a new program that's going to be starting, a husband and wife team, Deontay and Chrissy Graham. They'll be doing our morning show. It's called The Wake Up. Right here at www.theupliftlive.com. Go to Google Play or the App Store and download the app so that you can have some anointed music with you wherever you go. But right now, you're listening to The Review, and with us, of course, we have Dr. Norman Clements. He's talking to us about a two-tiered medical system and how our doctors are being targeted by federal agencies, as they say. And of course, they say it's all to tie up their resources. And of course, that has an impact on the community, whether or not they're going to get healthy. Reggie Ruffin is with us of the Just Cause Coalition, and of course, the Dean of Journalism, Cheryl Smith. We're going to pause for just a quick break. 214-239-2898. That's our number, and we'll be back with more right after this. After the show is over, everything. And we welcome you back to The Review right here at www.theupliftlive.com. I'm Reverend Ashley, and we thank you once again for being with us. And be sure to check out this great radio station once again when you need the Word of God. Now, here in Dallas, Texas, we had Heaven 97. It's gone. They have 1040. And of course, that's a ministry station. You don't get too much music there, but you get a little bit there. But here at www.theupliftlive.com, you got music, ministry. And once again, it's online. And this is the future of gospel radio. But what we do each and every Saturday morning, it's called The Review. We thank God for our 30 years as a journalist here in our Dallas-Fort Worth community. And each and every Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to about 11:30, we get a chance to talk with a myriad of people about issues important to the African-American community. And this morning, our panel, of course, consists of the one and only Cheryl Smith, the Dean of Journalism here in our Dallas-Fort Worth community, very much involved on the national level there. We also have Dr. Norman Clements with us, who's a dentist out of Detroit. And we understand that a lot of our Black doctors, they're being raided, they're being allegedly set up. You're talking about the Russia hoax. Now, I know that y'all don't like President Trump, But of course, the federal government, our own FBI and DIA, they ran that Russia hoax on Mr. Trump. And of course, we've seen a lot of stuff run on us as well as Black Americans. We've always had that stuff on. We're still trying to figure out who really assassinated Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy here in Dallas, Texas. Now, also with us today, Dr. Jalvis Edwards is tuning in with us, and also Reggie Rubin of the Just Cause Coalition. And once again, we're talking about some of the issues of major importance to the African American community. And Reggie, want to welcome you this morning. We have Dr. Jalvis Edwards with us. Once again, we have Dr. Norman Clements, and once again, Cheryl Smith is with us at this time. And let me go to Dr. Edwards to get him into the conversation. Then, Reggie, we'll bring you on into the conversation. But Dr. Edwards, good morning to you, sir. We've just been listening to what Dr. Clements has been going through and what a lot of you Black doctors are dealing with. And I'm just wondering, is it the federal government don't want y'all to help Black folks get healthy? Is this happening under the Democrats and Republicans, or what's really going on here? Or is this part of the effort to downsize the population, and we will use any means necessary to cut down on the Black population? Oh, Doc, I think you're muted. Unmute yourself there, Doc, so we can hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Oh, that's it, Doc. Good morning, sir.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having me on. And I hadn't seen Sister Cheryl Smith in quite some time. I don't think she's aging any, but we're happy to have her and to see her again. One of the problems that we have a 400-year history, an institutional history of white supremacy, and it has not gone away, and it doesn't look like it's going to go away anytime soon. This is part of our lifestyle here in America. People of color have a difficult time in gaining particular equity and equality. In the medical field, it is very prevalent, but it's obscure. It's quiet. It's not publicized very much. And so when people hear that physicians have been mistreated and put out of their practices, the first thing that comes to mind is that they must have done something wrong. And that is what they want the general public to ascertain and to grasp, is that doctor did something wrong. And if he hadn't have done anything wrong, they wouldn't have been over there bothering him. Okay. And so that's really kind of the platform that they have out in the general community, and people don't know any different. So they would, they basically take the ball and run with it. But for me, this is my 42nd year being a physician, and all I've ever wanted to do was to work for the people, to be able to give them the best care that I have based upon the training that I had received. And it's been a nightmare. I've got 5,500 pages with the FBI. My name is mentioned over 5,000 times in the FBI report. I've never been arrested. The last 8 years, the IRS went back 19 years from 2015 to 1996 and redid all my taxes and sent me a bill for $1.1 million. And I've been paying $5,000 a month for the last 8 years. And that's so it's really almost like a COINTEL kind of thing. You have different branches of the government working together. So if one part of the government doesn't get you, they'll send the other part. So they all work together. It's almost like a RICO kind of situation. And we've had a lot of problems. I don't really have a reason to cheat, because I came from a small town and we learned how to give to everybody. And we never were taught to take from somebody else. And so that's never been my style. I think, we've gone back to the 80s together. And when it was that two-tier system, well, it's really hadn't changed very much. They basically have moved the healthcare system from the government per se to the local, to the different entities, like the private equity firms. They moved the medicine to Walgreens and all of the pharmaceutical places. So it's kind of just another way of not standing up to to the oath that we took. Actually, it's shameful, kind of what we do. We have one of the worst healthcare systems in the. Actually, it ranks 11th behind other Western and industrialized nations. But we spend the most. We spend about $5 trillion every 12 months on healthcare, and we rank, at the bottom, particularly in access to care, primary care, preventative care. It's just an embarrassment. And so, I've been out here saying that, I'm going to do my part. And so I want to, thank you for having me on.
Now, Doc, also, Reggie, real quick, Reggie, a quick comment from you, Reggie. Now, these are doctors who've spent well beyond 8 years in medical school. Of course, we have a dentist, a Black general practitioner here, and the two-tiered medical system, just racism in America. Reggie, when we elected President Barack Obama, we thought we had turned the corner on this institutional racism, but to hear these doctors, and we followed these doctors for years, and it seems like the federal government is just harassing them, doing all these edits and audits and all this kind of stuff. Reggie, what's your assessment, being the founder of the Just Cause Coalition? I mean, you've seen racism, but did you ever think you'd see it like this in the medical community? Oh, maybe Reggie's frozen there. Like he is frozen. All right, well, let's see here. I guess we'll. Let's see. I think you're muted there too, Reggie. Unmute yourself so we can hear you. Let's see here. And also those of you in the chat. Appreciate you coming. Reggie, what do you think about the two? Reggie, what do you think about the two? I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I mean, it was like I was just saying momentarily, is that we're watching racism being repackaged, refurbished, and diverted in so many ways now more than ever. And this is just going to be another level of that. I mean, the proliferation of gay lifestyles and everything that keeps us from reproducing. Mass incarceration prevents us from reproducing. Unemployment, denying your economy and everything. The fiduciary lifeblood that we need. All of that's being challenged. The COVID pandemic, that was another thing, because it was projected in another 20 years, whites won't be the majority of the population. So hey, if there's any way they can do to clip us in any type of way to to proliferate, our whether it's our annihilation or just trimming it down to where we just can't reproduce as much as we can, we're watching that in live. I mean, look at Jackson, Mississippi. They can't get good drinking water and everything in a city that's 80% black, and the mayor's black. These things are not by accident. If I'm wrong, someone correct me, because we're looking at it every day.
My goodness.
When
you look at you would think the Democrats would be sensitive to this. Dr. Edwards, Dr. Clemens, have Democrats helped you? Have Republicans helped you? Or you found no help in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I can say this is that we've had to. Our group. One thing we have done is we're going to hold politicians and media accountable to what's going on here. And that's the importance about this information that we provide in this blog. We publish everybody's story in here, and so there is no denying. And it's very interesting that the young man Reggie brought out the fact that that we're being forced into this this system of fascism that is taking place. I recently, if you go to the blog, I wrote an article about, down here, I'm in Florida, by the way, Tampa, Florida. The governor has come in and said he's going to ban Black history. All right. And, part of my training as I've been going around is to, to look around and discuss Black history. I come from a family where my folks are from Panama. My folks are my parents or my grandparents are from Barbados. I have family in Cuba and those places, and I've traveled all over the world. But the interesting thing about what the governor says is that when he's banning Black history is that what Florida history is Black history. And we claim that when one does research and one has knowledge of thyself, then we can control our destiny from the onslaught of ignorance. And what you see here in the governor is onslaught of ignorance, in that Black folk were part of this, the St. Augustine, for example, the oldest community in the United States, and in what we call the United States. St. Augustine is a Black man. St. Monica is his mother. So that city was named after a Black man. That development was named after a Black man. Black people came to Florida, and when Black people were in Florida, they were free. I mean, they worked and lived in with the inhabitants here. It was the fact that there was a Southern Underground Railroad in which folks escaped the plantations of Georgia and Carolina, and then came south to the line of Florida, swore allegiance to the Spanish king, and were armed. And there was a free development here in Florida, Fort Mose, and that still exists. And when you go to what Mr. DeSantis says is eliminating Black education, all you have to do is go to the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg, or go to the District 6 Museum in Cape Town, or the Peter Hendricks Museum in Johannesburg. And what you see is these messages are the same thing. Mr. DeSantis is doing the same identical thing that Heinrich Verwoerd did in South Africa, the Nationalist Party, the Bantu education, the Bantu education and the Bantu stance and those sort of things. They are one and the same. And when you go into the Apartheid Museum, what is the first thing they talk about? They talk about apartheid is related to what? Nazism. And then they talk about Hitler and all these other German figures and that were in Namibia and places like that. And then they said, where did they get this Nazism from? From where? Jim Crow. So what you see, there's a nexus here between racismo here in South Africa. The whole development of the Bantu education is directly related to what Mr. DeSantis is doing, and the Republicans are now implementing here in Florida and throughout the United States. There is no difference. We are in and like I said, visit these three. I'm sure some of you have been to South and visit these museums and seen there is no difference. And this type of information is what we put out. If you go to our article, it's called Get Woke, Mr. DeSantis and stuff. And I say our because it comes to a lot of contribution. And we do this comparative analysis between the Bantu education that we're requesting. And we see that there's all what you see here, what we're going through is an extension of what is being reimposed on this country. This is, when you say this is fascism, Brother Reggie, that's exactly what it is. And we see it because we have to, when we go abroad, you can see how it influences our country and stuff.
Yes, indeed. Yes. All right. Well, once again, you're listening to the review right here at www.theupliftlive.com. I'm Robert Ashley with you here on a Saturday morning. And of course, we're talking once again with Cheryl Smith, the Dean of Journalism, Reggie Ruffin is with us of the Just Cause Coalition, Dr. Dralvis Edwards, and of course, Dr. Norman Clements with us, two African-American doctors who have been seemingly profiled by intelligence communities, the FBI, the DEA, and all that kind of thing, accused of being drug dealers, if you will, something that they certainly deny. And we have found that this seemingly has been happening with a lot of doctors of color. Now, Dr. Edwards, what about white doctors? I understand that there's an atrocious white doctor here in Dallas who got away with all kinds of things here, and just a two-tiered situation when it comes down to justice.
Well, you know, I started out in 1995 doing home visits, and this was rare. This is something we saw in the country when, you know, back in the 50s and 40s, where people had transportation issues, and doctors did home visits at that time. And we had some information that we were going to have to change the way we deliver health care, because everybody couldn't. At one time, you could go to the hospital and just say, "Hey, I'm tired. I want to spend a week," and you could stay in the hospital for a week with good insurance and nothing's wrong. And we were just the cost of health care is out of control now, but it was getting out of control. And one of the things that they were saying in the mid 90s is that we'd have to find different ways to take care of people. They're getting older. So they brought in home health care, and they brought in doctors who did home visits. And I was one of the few doctors in America who did home visits for Medicaid and Medicare people. Okay. So what happens, let's just take a scenario where you would have an 85-year-old lady who some days she felt like getting up, certain days she doesn't. So is she homebound? Is she not? I mean, that was left up to the physician. And so if you call and made a 911 call, the 911 call goes to Miss Smith's house. They pick Miss Smith up, take her to the emergency room. They run tests on her there in the emergency room, put her in the hospital. So you're now at $30,000, right? Where you spent this amount of money for probably a soft call where a physician could have made that same determination in the home and paid them $150. Okay. So I started to do home visits back in the 90s because I felt like that I had an obligation to try to reduce costs, improve healthcare outcomes. And I was placed up under a 100% prepayment review, which means they denied 100% of my claims. Okay. I sent the same patients to a white doctor here in the city, and those for the same conditions, same people, and they paid the white doctor. Okay. I begged them to take me to court. I wanted to, if I was guilty, I wanted all my colleagues and people who trusted me to know that I was a crook. But I could not get any of the agencies to give me a trial. We went all the way to the Supreme Court on 2 occasions. Now, what am I doing in the medicine and then I'm in the Supreme Court? What correlation is that? I mean, how do you justify telling your kids, I'm headed to the court? Headed to court for what, Dad? What did you do? Well, I was doing what I thought was best for the patients in the community, and that was going into their homes, making sure that they had, if there were moles, I would contact their city councilman and say, hey, look, we've got a patient who continues to have repeated visits to the hospital where they've got mold. We need to see what we can do to help that patient. So there were determinants, social determinants that I was working on back 25 years ago. But they said that I was a bad guy. But the bad guy they finally caught, who was a guy named Dr. Jacku Roy. And he had the largest Medicare fraud in home care that's ever been done, was done in Dallas, Texas, in the southern sector by Dr. Jacku Roy. He beat the government out of $378 million. Okay. So that's over $250 million in 6 years. And they had me down for 500,000. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is something that is happening to doctors across the country. And there seems to be a lid on how far they want you to go. If you bill more than $500,000 to Medicaid and Medicare, you will be audited by the FBI. Okay, and only 2% of the physicians in America bill over $500,000. Only 2% out of the 1 million that we have. Okay, but you will be, if you bill over $500,000 to Medicare and Medicaid, you will be audited if you're Black. Okay.
All right. Now, Doc, let me ask you real quick about this, because just this, I think it was last week, you were acknowledged by a group of young Black doctors who've gotten together. They've written books. I think it's called Black Men in White Coats. And we've interviewed some of those doctors. They're trying to encourage more Black men to become doctors. But the question is, as you were being acknowledged by that group just last week, are they aware of these type of pitfalls that people like you and Dr. Clemens are having to face in the medical industry, just trying to practice medicine?
That's why, guys like you and Cheryl make the difference, because they don't know. What you have to do to get in med school, you have to be clean. You can't have a record. You gotta keep a certain posture to get in medical school if you can. So you're not thinking about anything in the law, that breaking the law. I'm not saying that doctors don't, but most Black doctors don't. They don't take that road. It's much harder than it is versus white doctors. And when they get out, man, they don't know anything about being audited for Medicare fraud, and you don't even know what fraud is in Medicare. So they don't know. But they are starting to find out and see some of their colleagues who are older and saying, man, this, I don't want to go to med school if I'm going to get, jacked up and going to jail, or, holding my money or that kind of thing, if that's what this is. And so we're trying to say, look, we're not telling you not to go to med school. You just, wake up, get woke, understand how the system was set up. If you look at the top 10, one of the top 10 doctors that's well known, Marcelo Malpighi, who founded the corpuscles. Okay. You've got Ben Leeuwenhoek, who found you have these on all the tests. These guys believed in white superiority, Black inferiority. People that we see on tests that, so this is a real, it's a terrible system so far as we are concerned. So it looks to me that success really will bring you a lot of attention. If you do well, people like your service, they refer people. And I've always used my patients to be my best advertisers. If they recommend me, then fine, I want to take care of you. But that's one of the things that these younger guys are not aware of. They just think it's all race. It is, but there's much more. The fallout is far worse, because you can't really pick yourself up like Norm is just struggling, because they'll take your license and then kind of walk away. If it looks like it's going to be a good court case, they'll just walk away. You'll be left with the bag. That's one of the things that's happening to the doctors. We can't get court cases, but the Ruhan case really came out.
My case went all the way to the Supreme Court too. And I wrote the briefs, and they just simply they just simply ignored it because it was filed on a pro se basis. But I got calls from the inside folks from the Supreme Court who thought, not only thought it was brilliant, but they said, man, this is that, they told me how to change the cover page and put this on there, and it got docketed. In my case, got docketed in 2 days, and most of the cases get docketed in 3 and 4 months. So, but the Supreme Court of the United States chose to ignore this, and we see this. It's something with Carol Anderson. Someone familiar with Emory, Dr. Carol Anderson, Emory University, and she has a video that talks about white supremacy, and she talks about who do they target. Those who have ambition, those who have drive, those who refuse to be subjugated. There's a very interesting guy. I hope he comes on. His name is Dr. Terence Sasaki, and he's a Japanese physician who came to he was from Hawaii. He's Japanese origin, came from Hawaii to New York University, and he got targeted by the DEA. And he talks. I mean, he says things that I don't think no black folk would say, but he describes how the system works and how the having served time 10 years in prison with black folk and those sort of things. So I hope he gets a chance to come on. But again, this is nothing but an extension. You see that it is nothing but an extension to the society, of the attitudes within the society. You know, we Dice, like Dr. Edwards, we are threats because, and people like Sister Cheryl are even bigger threats because they have control of the media and they can expose these injustices and those sort of things. And these people need to be eliminated or put down and controlled and stuff.
Well, once again, you are watching and listening to the review right here at www.theupliftlive.com, a brand new online gospel radio station right here in Dallas, Texas. I'm Robert Ashley, and we thank you once again for being with us here on a Saturday morning. And I'll tell you what, we're going to get ready to pause just for a real quick break, but once again, still talking here with the Dean of Journalism, Cheryl Smith, and also with us today, Dr. Norman Clements, and of course, Dr. Jarvis Edwards, Reggie Ruffin. I do believe he's still with us here at the Just Cause Coalition. Now, when we get back, gentlemen, want to kind of change, and ladies want to change the conversation and just maybe get you to react to some of the top news stories of the week. Now, we have just learned here in Dallas, Texas, overnight that a black mother has been arrested in connection with the killing of 3 children and the wounding of several others. And this is out in the Ellis County area right here in the state of Texas. Also, this past week, President Joe Biden was with a very distinguished colonel by the name of Colonel Davis, who had not been recognized in some 60 years for the gallantry that he displayed on the battlefield there. Of course, there have been several other big news stories in the news, but once again, you're watching the review right here at www.theupliftlive.com. Pausing for a quick break, and we'll be back with more right after this. Ashley, and we thank you once again for being with us right here on The Review. And we're with you each and every Saturday morning from 10 a.m. Central Standard Time to about 11:30, where we review the top news stories of the week. And once again, we encourage you to go to Google Play, the App Store, and download our app to this great radio station. It's called Uplifted Now. And coming up this coming Monday morning, be sure to tune in for The Wake Up. That's a brand new program that's being hosted by the owner and operator of this radio station, Deontay Graham, and his wife, Chrissy. We're looking forward to The Wake Up. But right now, we're talking with our guests here this morning, and also want to give you a breaking news story that's taking place right here in Dallas this morning. And of course, I've got it kind of queued up on my phone here from Channel 4. We have had a tragic story out in the Ellis County area, and this is going to be really, really shocking to the African-American community to find that an African-American mother this morning is accused of killing 3 of her children and reportedly attempting to kill 2 other children, based upon the reports that we're getting this morning coming to us from Channel 4. And this is a sad, sad situation, and we hope and pray that everyone there in Ellis County will gather around and begin to pray for this particular family, because we just don't quite understand why something like this could indeed happen. But it has indeed happened. And of course, maybe we'll give you a little bit more on that. But the Ellis County Sheriff's Office is investigating the murders of 3 children in an attack that also injured 2 other children. Now, all 5 children were found at a home in Italy. That's in Ellis County, after Child Protective Services went to the home and discovered the victims on yesterday. Now, the home where the investigators pretty much found the children reportedly was right across from a Stafford Elementary School there in Italy, Texas. And family members are telling some of the reports here that the mother, Shemaiah Hall, from what we understand, is now in police custody. They have no idea as to why she may have allegedly done this, but this story is going to break a little bit later on. Of course, it's breaking now, and we'll be telling you a little bit more about that. But rather sad situation that's happening there in the Ellis County area. So once again, we continue to ask you to be prayerful for all that's going on in and around our world. Cheryl, and once again, Dr. Edwards and Dr. Clemens, coming back to you. We did see this week where President Biden seemingly acknowledged this Colonel Parrish, who had not been acknowledged for nearly 60 years for his bravery there in Vietnam. Cheryl, some of your thoughts. Why did it take so long, Cheryl? I mean, they lost his paperwork twice. I mean, come on. This guy was arresting people while he was being shot himself. Good grief.
Well, and you just think about it. If for every one that we hear about, how many do we not hear about? And, you've covered so much today that I sat quietly, and I just want to just throw a little bit into this, because what is happening with the doctors is happening with every profession. And if we think it's only happening to us, and I'd like to say also that sadly, a lot of our young people don't know, and we need to do a better job of, we can't put the onus on them to know. We have to teach them, because I don't know that they're even thinking it's racism, because we're growing up generations that don't think color is an issue until they get slapped. And that's why they lose their mind when something happens. Had a young sister tell me, crying because she went to work at a television station in a small town in Georgia, and someone taped a piece of paper and had written nigger on it. And she was losing her mind. She said, I'm quitting, I'm leaving. I can't be in this racist town. She said, I'm moving to New York. I said, newsflash, sister, you're going to run right into them in New York as well. And so we have to understand that. But I also know that I do believe, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier, that there's a target on Black people in America, and the Black men are getting it from white America more so, and the Black women are getting it from everywhere, including Black men and Black women, and that is a travesty. And I will say that there are people, we have to understand that it is bigger than me, than either the doctors, because there's a plan for taking out people, and the plan involves using other people to do it. So while you may not even be the target that they're going after, but if they could get you to flip someone else, there is every time a high profile Black person, and I'm going to just use Dallas alone, is under scrutiny, or something comes up, that's because they've used other people in other professions even to get them. They'll come and they'll say, okay, Cheryl, we're going to get you because you didn't file your taxes, which I did. But to get them off of my back, they just want a nugget in their whole bucket of what they're trying to do to get someone bigger, because it's not take down. I had the mentality when I was a kid, because we moved to a lot of new schools. And if somebody wanted to fight me, I went to fight the biggest and baddest, because I figured if I fought the biggest and baddest, I wouldn't have to fight anybody else at the school. And it worked. And so they are going after what is considered to be the biggest, baddest in our communities are the politicians. Even though some of them are weak, they don't do anything to uplift us. And but they are a Black politician.
All right, Dr. Clemens, you want to add something as well?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Harris,
you know, this is a very interesting subject about the colonel. There's a very interesting book that's out. This deals in terms of what's happened, like in World War, and Black folks who served under armed services. There's an interesting book that I read and started following. It's called The Interpreter. And what this book is about, the Black folk that had served, Black soldiers that served in World War II in Europe, and that nearly 70 Black soldiers were hung and by the United States Army. And this gentleman and the people in the town who saw these atrocities, where Black folks were being arrested, Black soldiers, Indian, were being arrested for things that were minuscule things, and were going to these JAG courts, and they received the death penalty, and there was this, and they were hung. And this is an atrocity.
Did that happen here? Did that happen here in Texas?
No, that's the one in Texas. I'm talking about this happened in Europe, in France.
So I know we had a situation like that here in Dallas, in Texas, back in 1917. We had a group of Black men in the same way.
But this was in Europe. This is the conduct of the United States justice system in during World War II invasion. The book is called that. It's a French guy that wrote it, because he was the interpreter, and how the United States, and then others, these were lynchings that took place by the United States armed forces that have not been held accountable. And it's a book by Alice Kaplan. I put, as you know, I've been putting some things on the side here in our chat room as notes, so that people can be directed to the show, that, you know, that we do have some validity and the documentation, those sort of things. So when you read this, one of the things that we were doing as part of my practice in pharmacy, you know, I always took photos and pictures. And so I was always actively involved in Black history. And one of the things I wanted to do was and I still am doing, is writing the Army and finding out, you know, why is this history being hidden? And now that we have the head of the Secretary of Defense is a Black man, and he should know about this, because he's from Thomasville, Georgia, and one of the other atrocities that ever took place is a gentleman who's the first guy who served in West Point. He went to West Point. It was a guy named Flipper, and Flipper was from Thomasville, Georgia. You don't know, you smiling, and they got in Tallahassee. If you go to Tallahassee, there is a church really called the Flipper Chapel, and people don't know about this, man. And I mean, I follow history and stuff, but anyway, and it's very interesting. I wanted to ask the secretary. Well, Mr. Secretary, you have to have known. He knows about this because he went to West Point. He grew up near Tallahassee, so he knows this stuff. And in fact, one of the hangings was that I was able to document, was the hangings of the U.S. Army, was a guy who was from Tallahassee, and his name, I can still remember his name was Moses, and he was hung as in Europe as a part of this, being charged with looking at a white woman or something like that. And the villagers, and the reaction is that the villagers in France talked about this and talked about how atrocious it was. How could they hang their own people? The Germans didn't even do this kind of stuff, hang their own people. And in fact, and when you talk about the Germans, there's a study that the Germans, if you read the article that we wrote within it's called the White Rose Project. And even the Nazis who studied apartheid in the United States, segregation in the United States, thought that Jim Crow was cruel. And the one thing they couldn't get their minds on was that how the Jews were classified as white people, because to them Jews were subhuman. So the whole thing is interconnected here. You get Verwoerd going to South Africa, going and studying in Germany, and then going back to South Africa, and that the Germans came to the United States, to Arkansas, to Texas, to study segregation and how to implement that around the world. Yeah. And
I do recall reading that history. Right. About how they came over here and studied the Ku Klux Klan and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And you ever hear about the atrocities? You go to South Africa, you will hear about the atrocities, or better, when you read about the atrocities of the Harar and the Houghton people that were there, and the Germans did the very same practices of gassing and this sort of stuff. They first did that in Namibia. And so there's monuments to this whole thing that took place. So we're not isolated. There is a nexus here between, and then you see these same attitudes, the same attitudes as your good Texas governor over there, and Abbott. He got the same attitude too. All right, and our DeSantis, that all of them have adopted what the Germans and the Milan and the Nationalist Party in 1948 did in South Africa.
And of course, Dr. Furpo Carr documents that in his book called The Black Holocaust. Dr. Furpo Carr out of Los Angeles documents all of them in his book called The Black Holocaust out of Los Angeles. But Dr. Edwards, let me ask you real quickly. I got to switch topics here, but of course you want to chime in. The situation in Ohio. We have just sent another $130 million over to Ukraine. So far, we have sent Ukrainians at least $150 billion in terms of this war there. And now we're getting, President Biden announced yesterday, he's saying another $130 million over to Ukraine. Now, in Ohio, where that train derailment, dioxins, what can you tell us about the lethality of dioxins? Dr. Edwards, is there anything those folk in Ohio need to be concerned about? And of course, we've been being polluted for years. We've had the RSR lead smelter plant here in Dallas, Texas, and all that Superfund cleanup money from Democrats and Republicans. But down the dioxins, Doc, is that a dangerous situation? Oh, I think you're muted. You're muted, Doc. Unmute yourself there if you could. Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Doc. Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, they are definitely substances that you end up with some type of long-term disability, if not cancer and death. I mean, it's it's going to be interesting because we had that same kind of thing here in Dallas, the lead smelters and so forth, and we end up with cancer much earlier, and young people dying at 55 years old and that kind of thing. They will probably, I think that's a community that's predominantly white. They'll do whatever, they'll get compensations and that kind of thing. But there's a lot to be expected. So far as in the next 10 years, you'll start to seeing, 35-year-old people with, terminal diseases and so forth. So the thing that really is about that is that President Obama had already implemented in his administration to change how those trains could stop and that kind of thing. And President Trump took it out, and so that's is unfortunate. But yes, they can be definitely a tyranny in a community that size and that small. That was a lot that was released into the atmosphere.
All right, gentlemen, and I've got to ask you about what's happened in Chicago this week. Lori Lightfoot, the openly Black lesbian mayor, lost her election. She says she lost because she was a Black woman, but now when she got elected, they elected a Black woman, but she lost. Some are wondering if indeed the city of Chicago is rejecting the so-called woke politics. And also the police chief, Dave Brown, who used to be here in Dallas, who sent a robot in and blew up a brother who had shot 5 police officers in Dallas. I mean, a real controversy. He decided to resign. He's coming back to Dallas. It's going to be working for a big law firm here in Dallas, Texas. Here's another story that made news this week. Up in California, they're looking at the possibility of giving every Black person at least $300,000 in terms of reparations. And in New York, they're looking at the possibility of giving Black folks who say they were victimized during the George Floyd rebellion and protest at least $20,000 as a result of police misconduct. Any thoughts, gentlemen, about either of those stories? I mean, the whole reparations thing in California, is Gavin Newsom saying that's because he wants to run for president against Joe Biden? Or, I mean, if we're sending $150 billion to Ukraine, we could have been played Black folks off in terms of reparations.
What is interesting, going back to the drug war, I talk about reading the Cigars report. Okay, that's a special inspector general on Afghanistan, and they show you how corrupt we're in bed with the cartels. I mean, with the so-called drug dealers. So the FBI decided it was going, and the DA decided we're going to target one of the big drug growers or opium growers in Afghanistan. I forgot his name, but what turns out is that during that time period, the Karzai government got wind of this. Okay,
Mohammed Karzai.
Mr. Mohammed Karzai, he was in charge, and he decided not to cooperate with this arrest that the FBI wanted to do with this big opium trade dealer. And so as a result, the State Department agreed to pay the Karzai government, okay? Here it is, $147, oh Lord of Jesus, $1 billion for this one guy, freedom. I mean, whatever, so we can ignore and wash this under the rug, okay? And we can't fix, and I'm saying $147 billion. Okay, here we go. And you can't fix the water system in Jackson, huh? You can't, and we got schools that need high-speed internet connection here in this country. And you're going, hey, and that's the other thing. And then we're gonna go out here and attack all these doctors, okay, and all these Black doctors. And then you're gonna ask us to go to war with the Chinese army. Okay, whose boys and girls are you going to get to do this? And most importantly,
just this week, did y'all hear that just this week, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, called upon the American people to send their sons and daughters to fight over there? I mean, the news media, I don't know why they haven't been reporting this.
And at the same time, you're going to tell us that we can't vote and we've got to have voter registration, and those who are eligible to vote have got to have all kind of ID and DNA to go out here and vote? Huh? Is that what you're saying? I mean, and you want us to go back and fight? It's just like the guy in the colonel in Vietnam. He's a colonel in Vietnam. He served in Vietnam, killing. Attacking people that done nothing to us except fight against colonialism that the French had imposed and that the United States came back into support, and then the French got their butts beaten, Dien Bien Phu, and now all of a sudden now you want us little black boys and girls to go in there and defend Uncle Sam again in Vietnam, and then the brother went, he fought, and then they forgot. Was it they forgot about him? How many times did they lose his? They
say they lost it. They lost it twice.
His fighting record. How could that happen? You know.
And it took him 60 years to get that recognition. But Cheryl, real quickly, now that we have you back, Cheryl, what happened to Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago?
You know, that's really interesting. What happened? And I've talked to my correspondents in Chicago. You know, she actually came and had a fundraiser in Dallas.
Yes.
And what happened? One thing that folks in Chicago are asking, with 7 black people in the race, why couldn't they come together like the white folks did and back one candidate? And because you expected a runoff, and now people are dividing, and the whites are going out and lining up the black folks to endorse the other person. But really interesting, there were people that were upset with there's been some negative press about the mayor, her actions or inactions. Unfortunately, we have to deal with, when we're in positions, we have to deal with our private life being public. And you know, she was from the LGBTQ community, and there was some involvement there. There are decisions she made. Folks were unhappy with the chief of police, who is actually from Dallas, and he actually Chief Brown, who was the superintendent there in Chicago, actually tendered his resignation because most of the candidates running said they were going to get rid of him anyway. And he was put in a very precarious position, because if you look at cities in the North and South, and I'm from the North, and I know I grew up with a superior attitude, because even as a child, when Southern children would come to the North, they always put them back a grade. So I said, oh, we must be smarter than them, you know. And so, but I did an interview on WVON when Chief Brown actually went to Ohio, and they were asking me, did I think he should, you know, clear out the department of this command staff? And I said, no, he needs to know there are people there who know who the bodies are and where they're buried. And and then coming from, I think you could come from Chicago to Dallas and adjust better than you can go from Dallas to Chicago, because it's an entirely different beast. You see that even in the projects. When I came to, and Dr. Clement, you talked about Tallahassee. Well, you know, I became a woman in Tallahassee at Florida A&M University. And I know when I first got down to Tallahassee, I said, these are projects, because I'm thinking about the projects of Newark, New Jersey that we dealt with. Yes. So, you know, she was up against a lot, but sometimes a lot of what we're up against is ourselves. And I just wanted to say, Doc mentioned about the hangings, and you have a legislator in Tennessee that is saying, you know, we're saying that, okay, we have the death penalty, and he's talking about hanging from a tree, you know. And you just think about the culture of people, because when you think back in the day, and even if you go back and watch old rawhide westerns or whatever, and you see watching people get hung is the culture of some people. It was not in our culture to go and stand like you going to a barbecue to watch them hang a Negro, you know, but that's what was actually happening. So when we look for what we need to really look at with Chicago,
he's no better than his ancestors.
Yeah, exactly. And,
you know, right.
And we need to do a history check on Representative Sherrill and Sherrill in Tennessee, because he's just happy with, and we need to start calling these people out. What you have identified, Robert, is what Doc Clements has been really specific about, and even you alluded to it. We need to do a better job. We need to say what folks pains are and what we're going through in the industry. We need to elevate it more. We can't assume that people know we're going through it. And we have to realize that mental health
It's real.
unhealthiness. It's
I got to get ready to wrap up. I got to get ready to wrap up here, y'all. But want to hear this last story here.
For you, the Dallas County Sheriff's Department is investigating the murders of 3 children in an attack that also injured 2 other children. Good evening, I'm Heather Hayes.
I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. All 5 children were found at a home in Italy in Ellis County after Child Protective Services went to that home late this afternoon. Sheriff's investigators say the suspected attacker is in custody and indicated it is someone who's close to the children, but would not say how they are tied to the children. Fox News' Peyton Yeager is in Italy tonight with more on this murder investigation. Peyton.
Steve, in the home where investigators found the children is just behind me, behind the crime scene tape behind me, and also across the street from Stafford Elementary here in Italy. And neighbors and family members tell me off camera that some of the victims went to Stafford Elementary here in Italy. Now, what we know right now is around 4 p.m. this afternoon, a Child Protective Service worker called 911 from a home here on Harris Street in Italy. Ellis County Sheriff arrived on scene to find 3 children dead inside the home. 2 other children were injured and taken to nearby hospitals. The ages of the children have not been released yet, but neighbors and family members tell us that they are elementary age and even younger. Ellis County says the suspect.
Well, once again, y'all, we are completely out of time, but Shemaya Hall, you're going to be hearing more about this story. This happened to have been a Black mother, and these were children of color. 3 were killed, 2 were injured, and this is a developing story that's taking place right here in the outskirts of the Dallas, Texas area. Well, I'll tell you what, Dr. Clemens and, of course, Dr. Edwards and Cheryl, we can't thank you enough. Hate to end on such a negative note here, but maybe this is an indication of the mental health that's going on within our community. Dr. Clemens, real quick, sir.
That what you're describing there is a public health problem. I think we can all agree to that, and that's why you have the importance of people that are the professionals that recognize these conditions inside our community. It's also something broader than that. It's an economic problem that. Yes. In terms of when you deprive a person of education and you make them subhuman and you impose upon they themselves, they have children, and you make it impossible for them to see the light. These type of tragedies happen. So this is a societal problem that
yes.
we have Dr. Edwards and myself. And you know what? You even see it in people's mouths, when you go look at dental care and stuff like that. You see them stressed out, people who have cavities, periodontal disease and stuff. You look, and oftentimes it's a result of folks.
All right. And Dr. Edwards, real quick before we leave, Doc, invite everybody to your clinic where you're located, Doc. And you're located in the Black community. Even though you're being fought by the federal government, all that, where are you located, Doc? What's going on? Real quick.
A couple of blocks from South Oak Cliff. I'm right behind Catfish Floyd. I'm in Glendale Shopping Center. We open 7 days a week, and we deliver the best care we can. We're in one of the worst diabetic zip codes in the United States. Yes, there's more dialysis center in Southern Dallas than we have Black medical schools and hospitals combined.
And Dr. Edwards is a criminal.
Black medical schools.
And Dr. Edwards is the criminal because he's the one who is treating these people and reporting on it. That's amazing. They tracking him for 20 years because he's out here treating people with dignity and respect and stuff and reporting on it. And our filtered Negro friends sit down and say, stay quiet about this. That's my favorite, a filtered Negro who sits there and sits quiet about this and impressed with his credentials, that sort of thing. Read, and all I say is read our blog of role models and invisible men exposing the rise and the mission of the filtered Negro. You will find that in YourWithinTheNorms.com. And I really, this is
all right. And Cheryl, real quick, because we're over time here, y'all. Cheryl, how can people find you and your publications? Cheryl?
Well, you can go to www.texasmetronews.com, and I just tell you the Black Press is like the 411, the book, or what do you call those? The phone book of our community. When someone calls our office, they call our office, and especially when they move to town, and say, "Can you name a doctor? Can you name a funeral home? Can you name a church?" And we always give that information out, and we need that reciprocity in terms of supporting and saying, especially when folks are doing the type of work at Texas Metro News that we're doing. And I invite everyone to check it out and to pick up a paper. Don't walk by it like it is going to bite you, but maybe you'll find out some of the information. And we're definitely we need to do a better job of supporting each other across platforms, across, whatever industry, because I assure you, whatever the doctors are going through, Black journalists are dealing with it. And if you heard Roland Martin on March 1st, and you can tune in to Black Star Network and see where he is talking about how we have been locked out of advertising to the tune. I'll just give you an example. The Dallas Morning News has a $18 million a year master agreement with the city of Dallas. Texas Metro News has a $50,000.
Oh,
well, you need that Cheryl. You need we need to put you in your within the norms. I got to write about you and put there, and then you can report on us too. I'm more than happy to do that. And I'm sure if you went to Florida A&M, you knew Barbara Reynolds, and I know Barbara Reynolds.
Prolific author Barbara Reynolds. She was a great author. We've interviewed many of the occasions.
My son.
She'll tell you a story. We traveled all over the South. She and I documenting the atrocities that was happening when they were targeting Black doctors for Medicaid fraud. And in fact, her research, one Black doctor named Carol Sims Robertson was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Okay. Barbara wrote an article and got to John Conyers, and she was evicted from the federal prison because of that article and John Conyers' work in 2 years. And we worked on that case. It was a Detroit case. Carol, and she's down here in Florida right now, a dermatologist, accomplished dermatologist. We did that back in the day when the Congress meant something. With the help of John, I remember John Conyers, General Survey of America, and that's when they had attacked us for Medicaid fraud. They were doing that stuff. So yes, Clement, I know these people.
Edwards and Carol, we can't thank you enough for being with us this morning. Yes. We'll have to get this panel again. And once again, Dr. Clemens, good to have you with us. And Dr. Edwards, we certainly want to thank you. And God bless you, Cheryl. And once again, I want to thank all of our Uplift family for being with us. And be sure now to go to, of course, our website if you'd like to, www.theuplift.live. You can go to Google Play in the App Store and download our app, Uplifted Now. And also be sure to tune in Monday morning for the brand new morning show. It's called The Wake Up. And of course, once again, that's with Deontay Graham and Chrissy Graham, owners and operators of this great radio station, www.theupliftlive.com. Look, I'm Reverend Ashley. We'll see you. I want you to have a blessed day.